time. I appreciate that. So let's just hop right into it. So one thing I want to address in a little bit more timely fashion here is that, we've been getting a lot of calls, not a lot, a fair amount of calls from current operators that are like, hey, PG&E is cutting off our power like right now. What the hell do we do about this? And it's a very scary situation. If you don't know anything about this situation here, up in Northern California, there's wildfires. And the utility company is now starting to cut off power to certain parts of the area so that the wires aren't hot and not live, and it doesn't hurt the infrastructure, and many other reasons why they're cutting the power. And a lot of operators are like, they've been doing a grow for some certain amount of time, and this is very, very scary for operators. They've been going a long, long time, spending a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of materials, and just a lot of things going on there. So what do? You start seeing the utility companies start cutting off. And this is where experience, preparedness, and capital comes into play as a successful cultivator in these kind of affected areas. So first, I'm really, really sorry to hear that this is happening, not just for the cannabis companies, but also for the residents. It's a very scary situation when you start to see, your property, it could be burned down. Everything you have could be going away. And again, a few of our clients are experiencing huge losses, and it kills me to hear this situation. So what do you do as a grower? What do you do as an operator? So again, you're investing all this time, this effort, this money. Maybe you've taken on money from an investor. You create a great crop, and the utility company just comes in and shuts all that power off, right? But this is not just a thing that happens with someone shutting the power off. There could be a fire that hits, a forest fire or an internal fire, a crash into a pole outside your building. There could be an overheated transformer. There are many reasons why your power could be cut off. Again, maybe you're in the middle of harvest season. Maybe you're in the middle of drying. You did your harvest in early September or late September, and now you're drying and curing things. So here's our suggestions. This is where the preparedness comes in. You need to have a natural gas generator or some type of generator as backup, right? This is why it takes so much money to start up as a cannabis operator in certain areas, right? You have to prepare for the worst, right? You don't need insurance until you actually need insurance. And I know that sucks, but it's just part of the industry here. And one of the things is, like, you can't depend on a city or utility company to save you, right? As an entrepreneur, everything is our fault, right? Good or bad. And that's a very, very heavy thing to take on as an entrepreneur, right? There's no guarantees in any of this. This could happen in anywhere in the country, right? You could have a hurricane come through and mess up your crop. All the way up in New York, we saw hurricanes a few years ago. So we have no clue what could happen. But, blaming the utility company, blaming the city, blaming someone else, that's not going to bring your power back on. That's not going to bring your plants back, right? The most sophisticated and experienced growers know that this is a potential issue. And this is, again, where that experience comes in. So make sure you have some type of backup, even if it's just a low level of backup, so you can bring a little bit of light in, keep them on the right lighting schedule, and be ready and have an emergency action plan. So just my 2 cents there. Anybody that's being affected by this, residents or cannabis entrepreneurs, I feel I'm very sorry for you, and I hope you guys can figure out a solution. Hopefully it doesn't last too long, and hopefully you're planning. That's kind of my 2 cents on that. So constantly, next question here, we get asked, where do we see the industry going in 12 to 24 months? And honestly, I have no clue. We don't have a crystal ball. I couldn't just tell you, it's going to be like this or like that. We can read regulations and say, applications are going to be due in a certain state at this time, but they could change all the time. They kick the can down the road because, regulators, they don't see issues. They're just like so in there trying to get the legislation done or the regulations done. They don't see what's happening. But the trajectory of things can change dramatically. For example, vapes, they were all the rave. 18 months ago, I would have told you, invest in vapes. Start a vape company. Now it looks like I have no clue what that's going to be, what all that shakeout's going to be. You got 26 people that are dead from nicotine or cannabis-related hemp vaporizers, whatever that's going to be. 1,300 people sick. That puts a very big, scarlet letter on the vape industry. How will they maneuver out of it? I have no clue, but we'll see how that all shakes out. I'm sure that funding is very much slowing down with ventures that are heavily entrenched into that specific product. And especially if you haven't hedged against your risk and you're only a vape company, you're probably a little bit on your uneasy side at the moment. But a few things come to mind I want to just talk about and throw some thoughts out there about things that I think about and just things we've been hearing from clients. So licensing, right? Everyone is in a rush to get licensing. So in LA, we had our application open, I think it was September 3rd, and it was a 2-week rolling application. 700 people signed up for that application. And what that came down to is that 500 people applied within the first hour because it was a first come, first place in line kind of application. So the first person who applied is the first application the city's going to look at. So if you didn't apply within that first hour, I'm just going to say you most likely will not get a license this time around, right? But we all think it's like so hard to get a license, which yes, right now it is. But let's look at the industry in 8, 10, 12, 15 years. At that point, there are going to be so many licenses because so many cities will see how much tax revenue, how helpful this plant is to the community as a medicine, again, as a tax revenue generator. It's not going to look like it does today. It's not just going to be, green leaf this or 420 boys that. We're talking CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, Walmart. They will all at some point enter into this industry and they will be your competitors. And they are going to kick ass because they have great operations, they have locations, they have distribution infrastructure, and they are well capitalized to come clean house. So they're going to start to buy up all these licenses if there are not a lot more here. So I would expect in licensing to see a lot more licenses come out, right? The cat's out of the bag. We're not going backwards in this space. There will just be more and more and more licenses. As you see for the LA area, you can get a bypass, not a bypass on the licensing, but on the density stuff. If you get a council person in your district to say, hey, I want this one here, you can bypass the density issues in that area. So you're going to see a lot more expansion and growth of this licensing. Now, less about the product and more about the brand is the next thing I want to talk about. Cannabis is getting more and more sophisticated. The product is becoming more and more refined and better and better and better. So what you're going to see is a collapse. It's going to become commoditized, right? You're going to see a leveling off of the prices. Everything is going to be pure grade A, the best of the best of the best connoisseur. Right? When I came out here 10 years ago, there was like low shelf, mid shelf, top shelf. Now there's connoisseur, AAA grade, and there's like 9 shelves now. But you're going to see everything move up to where that 90% of the cannabis that's grown is going to be the best of the best. So it's going to be around, building a brand that resonates with people and creating that long-standing brand that's not just for everyone, but for a target audience, right? You can't sell your product to everybody, right? You have to pick a specific target audience. There's a few that aren't being addressed that I keep banging on these ones the most, is that there's not that many female-only brands. And if there is, they're not getting enough, shelf space. They're not getting enough, attention. So female-only brands, things that are for mothers, right? You got to look at disposable income. Okay, so you think about disposable income and who makes the choices for the family, right? You can see the mothers are going to be making health choices for the families. They already do, and they're the ones that say where the money goes. So why are there no brands targeted towards these mothers, right? Or to these older people? The second one I want to talk about is, the ones that are 55 and older. They're retired. They're empty nesters. They're not paying for their kids' life now. So now they have a little bit more money. Why are there no brands specifically towards the older generation that have disposable income, that are, a little bit more open to trying this out? Granted, Nancy Reagan did a great job scaring a lot of people away from cannabis, but you also see there are a lot of people that were hippies back in the 60s that want this revival and they want access. They've tried prescription or patent medications. They don't want to keep doing that. They don't want to be addicted to these medications. They want to try something natural. Maybe their son or their daughter or their granddaughter has given them something. So yeah, I see Goat Tree's talking about old fart herbs, who knows what it's going to be, but go out there and address a specific niche of that audience, right? I want to give you a very tangible example of why you start niche and then you expand, right? The Facebooks of the world, Facebook started off as a college application. Only college students could get into it. Now, rarely do you see college kids on it. It's everywhere. 1.2 billion users, but it's mostly moms posting memes of minions, okay? Right? Or stay in contact with your family members. So things mature, industries mature, brands mature. They can go out and touch other things. So find that create cash flow, parlay that cash flow, and expand. Now, a third thing I want to talk about here is taxes. You really have to think about the future of taxes, okay? My thing I've been pounding really hard is that cash crimes are the new drug crimes. You're not getting in trouble for having cannabis, right? We're past that. I know in some places it's still very like, oh, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get thrown in jail. And we got a lot of cleaning up to do with a lot of the past convictions. I don't want to touch on that at this point here. That's not what I'm here to get on that. But you're going to get in trouble for not keeping your books straight. You're going to get in trouble for, not filing your taxes properly, right? Al Capone didn't go to jail for rum running. He went to jail for tax evasion. So really think about that. And the statute of limitations on that is forever. It's indefinite. You're going to get, it could be 20 years from now. They'll find out you didn't claim some taxes. Penalties, fees, and interest are going to gut your business or gut you personally. So once the cities start to see how much money they're losing on, they will start to do audits, whether it's random or, just required annual, biannual audits, because someone's going to do a study. There's going to be some kind of watchdog organization that's going to point out the fact that these numbers that are being self-policed by the businesses is not all the money that's supposed to be taxed, right? Cities need money for all types of infrastructure projects, from schools, streets, roads, feeding the police force, for the fire department, for parks, all these different things. Where's the best place to get that? From a new and budding industry that has lots and lots of cash. So you already see that taxes are very high right now, but it's self-reporting. So when the governments at any level start to see, well, we can start to pick these people off, they will. Trust me, they will. Maybe it's not now, maybe it's not in 5 years, and maybe in 7 years, but if you plan on being in this industry for the long haul, be ready for audits. It's going to be something out there. And it's something that cities can easily and swiftly pass regulations. Trust me, there could be a city council meeting, we'll say like in 4 weeks, LA City Council. They put up a measure. Hey, we want to require audits. Everyone in favor say aye. 7 out of the 9 people say aye, and bam, we're in. Now we have audits on the board, and they'll implement them in 12 months. And that's real. That's real life, you guys. That's real life. So my 2 cents on this is to prep now for audits. Even if it's not required, you should prep now. You should know what your book's like. So prep now, keep your books clean, because when you do get an audit and say you do some things wrong, it's not just the back taxes. It's penalties, fees, and most importantly, compounding interest is how they're going to come back at your business. So be very thoughtful, because audits are not scary if you're prepared for it. Audits are pretty much just opening up the books and saying, this is what we did. This is exactly what we said we did in our tax return. No worries. Go through it, comb through it, right? Just be thoughtful. Don't try to pull one over on the government. They've got unlimited money, deep pockets. They will come after you if you try to skirt the law. And then my 4th part, I want to talk about the future. What does that look like? Is hemp. We have not even begun to see what this big dragon is starting to awaken right now. We're in our first Croptober right now. You're going to see Oklahoma pulling millions of pounds in, California pulling millions of pounds of hemp in here. And you haven't even seen the applications. If you watched our webinar last week about industrial hemp and getting your license, which I suggest everybody that wants to get into cultivation, get your license. We can help you out with that. Really be thoughtful about getting into that. But once these antiquated industries, the coals, the petros, the plastic manufacturing, materials manufacturing, right? The garments, it's crazy how much, crap and garbage comes from creating jeans and denim and all these different things. Once these industries start to get shaken up, you're going to see a huge influx of hemp becoming the number one, raw material to create a lot of products, bioplastics, biofuels, textiles, car parts. They're stronger, right? I think in like 1950 something, Henry Ford built a car purely out of hemp. Then prohibition came away and that went away. But this is real. This is going to come. You're going to see a lot of hemp over the next 10, 15, 30 years. Huge transformation, right? So just be thoughtful. Don't just think it's all about cannabis, and getting into the cannabis industry. If you want to get around a little bit more and not have so much restrictions, then hemp may be your way into this kind of, new crop, right? There's a few crops that change the way we see the world: alcohol, sugar, salt, tea, and coffee. Those 5 right there have transformed our entire, existence as people. So you're going to see the same thing with cannabis. So be very thoughtful and try to move your way into that. Educate yourself. Don't just turn a blind eye because it doesn't get you high or because people don't desire it. It's not sexy. Trust me, a lot of people, there's big buying orders out there. We see these things come across our emails a lot. 50 million pounds, 100 million pound buying orders that no one can fulfill on. So be really thoughtful. If you want to get into this, that's one way to get in, which dovetails into my next question. People always ask us, should I start a hemp farm or a cannabis business, right? There's a lot of considerations to this, and there's no one right answer, right? Everything I'm telling you today, this is not advice for business, tax, legal, investment advice. This is not, anything of that sense. This is just quick, hot takes on some things that we hear all the time asked of us. So should you start a hemp farm or a cannabis business? Well, some considerations around that are, what's your timeline looking like, right? Cannabis has long wait times for licensing, finding a compliant property, which is like finding a needle in a haystack. And then when you do find one, you have to convince a landlord that you're not going to be out here doing drug running, right? You have to explain a lot of things to people because this is a generational issue. It's not that it's bad or anything like that. It's just people don't understand. There's been a lot of propaganda, a lot of misinformation out there. Along from the property, you got to raise capital if you're not well capitalized or fully capitalized yourself, and so many other things that can push this out. Whereas hemp, it's a little more straightforward. It's passed by the 2018 Farm Bill, so it's totally 100% legal. You can cross state lines. You can get started relatively quicker with the licensing process. It's pretty much like a, 2 to 4 week turnaround time. And it really depends on the market, right? Because if you're up in the north and you're thinking about getting into hemp now, you can't plant a crop until next spring. But if you're in the lower parts of the area of the country, or you're in a more tropical, subtropical area, you can probably get started a little sooner. But at any rate, that's one consideration. What's your timeline? Now, the second consideration is capital needed. Now, you can say a little bit or a lot of bit more capital is needed for cannabis than there is for hemp, but that's depending on the scale of your hemp farm. If you want to go open up a 5,000 acre hemp farm, you're going to take a lot of bucks to do that, right? Because you either have to acquire the land outright or lease the land. But a way to drop down that capital requirement for the hemp is doing a profit split or a crop split with the person that owns the land, and say, front me the land for 9, 12, 18 months, and I'll split everything with you either 50-50, 60-40, 65-35, whatever you feel is right for you and your specific situation. And with the capital part, licensing for cannabis can be extremely expensive if you're not doing it yourself. You have to put a whole team together to create a security plan, financial plan, a legal plan, HR plan, SOPs, all these things. If you don't have that knowledge yourself or in-house, it's going to be very expensive to buy those experts' time to help you write that cannabis application. And on top of that, cannabis is it's incredibly fierce. The competition is fierce. Again, in LA, 700 applications for 100 licenses. That's a huge, huge amount of competition there. Whereas like the licensing for hemp, pretty much anyone that applies will likely get it if the application is filled out properly. Now with hemp, it's a sleeping giant. Now many people are looking at this in the commercial and industrial applications, but there will be a huge demand for it. So we'll see how that all shakes out. And again, I know hemp's not as sexy, but the ROI could be incredible over the next, 5 to 8 years. We'll hop back, and I got to see some questions coming in here. Let's hop into a few. Let me just finish this one right here, and I'll hop into these 2 questions from Benny and from Richard here. So another consideration for you start a hemp farm or a cannabis business, you have to think about what you are good at, okay? Don't just do something because it's the fun thing or the hip thing to do now, right? You have no idea how many people I saw were social media experts 5 years ago. Then they were cryptocurrency experts 3 years ago, and now they're cannabis experts. Like, come on, guys, like cut me a break here. Like, don't keep jumping on these trains. This is not a get rich quick thing. This is going to be here for a long time. This is a real industry, right? So if you're great at large scale farming, then, maybe your money should be best spent in hemp, right? But if you're a processor, maybe go into both. Like if you're a good manufacturer and you have great management abilities of a manufacturing facility, think about going into both. Or if you are great at distribution and you have those kind of connections, consider becoming a cannabis distributor. You have to think about what you're good at, because you want to triple down with what you're good at, learn enough to be dangerous in what you're bad at, just so you can manage those people that are working for you. Two more things here on considerations from starting a hemp farm or a cannabis business. Do you want to build a brand or go deeper into operations? So cannabis, as I said earlier, is all about building a brand. The cannabis product is just going to kind of essentially become commoditized. It's all about the brand. Whereas hemp, you don't really have to worry too much about the brand. There will be some branding there, but it's really about creating a great final product on that large scale, right? So just think about that. Do you want to be a big scale person, or do you want to be a brand manager? And then lastly, why not do both, or do one then the other, right? Think about this as a long-term journey and not a get-rich-quick scheme, because both crops are going to be here until the end of time. The cat's out of the bag. We're not putting cannabis away. We're not putting hemp farming away. It's not going away. So consider trying to really move forward with one of them on a smaller scale to parlay, create cash flow, and then go into the next one. I just really think you should try and really do what you're good at here. So let's get into some of these questions on the thing here. What's your advice so Benny Salas asks, what's your advice for building a business plan for dispensary? My advice for that would be to reach out to a business plan writer, number one. If you don't know how to write a very good business plan, look up examples of business plans and then start to assemble a team. Because when you go to submit an application, they're going to ask you for a business plan, but they're going to want to see standard operating procedures to make sure you know what you're doing for your business. And you have to think about who is the audience for this business plan, because a business plan for the city is a lot different than a business plan for investors, also from sophisticated investors to friends and family, right? With friends and family, you have a little more leeway. You're like, I'm opening up a dispensary, but like opening a dispensary, you tell it to a sophisticated investor, they're like, great, big whoop. We're in the cannabis industry. We know. It's not very novel to think of that to open up a cannabis dispensary. So what makes you different? So you have to put a little more nuances there into that. So that's a few things I would think about, Benny, when you're trying to create a business plan for dispensary. Create a team, look at examples, and understand the context of the audience consuming it, and then write to that audience. Richard asks, back to the electricity issue, do you expect the government penalizing high-use customers? So I'm not sure if they'll be penalizing high-use customers. There are different rates for daytime and for nighttime. So what we tell some of our very large-scale people is that if it makes sense, use a natural gas generator for the daytime to supplement and only run half of your electricity on the grid, right? From the grid, and then half from that generator if you can. Now it takes a lot of, really intricate electrical work to do this, but if you can reduce your costs that way, because usually you do 12 on, 12 off for flowering. And so you'll do half your rooms on during the day and half your rooms on during the night. Because if you create too much, maybe your building can't support all of that pull for the electricity. So they call it switching and staggering them there. So I don't know if the government's going to be taxing them that hard. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of, once they start to see the real numbers. We're so early in this industry. I'm just shooting in the dark here, Rich. And I would say there may be something, but I would say it's going to be more around like your payload and trying to reduce your costs as a business and creating bigger margins for yourself. And Benny, all right, cool. He'll be scheduling a call with me. I think I sent you an email, so let's get on that call. And then engineering cannabis. Let's see, what are your opinions on of tech and cannabis? There's a lot of great technology out there with tech and cannabis. I think that you have to, don't just create tech for the sake of creating tech because you think it's going to be a good thing that people want, right? Don't just create technology for a problem that doesn't exist. What I would tell people that are trying to get into technology that helps cannabis entrepreneurs or cannabis businesses is go work with that audience. Be the client of your tech product and really feel the pains, right? Really see what the problems are. Because if you just create like, oh, well, I created this delivery app that's going to help cannabis entrepreneurs sell their cannabis, but maybe you're missing out on the real one feature because you don't want to build, I've got a background in tech, in the startup side and the consulting and the marketing side. What you see a lot of issues around is that tech entrepreneurs say, oh, we're going to build this thing with 900 features. You don't want to do it that way. You want to build the feature set that is most necessary to derive value from your product, to keep your customers happy and get them to start paying, and then use that cash flow to fund the rest of the features. Don't try to do this all at one time. Really solve a problem. Don't make up some fake problem and then, try to market to the cannabis entrepreneurs. So that would be my hot take on the tech and cannabis. An update, we'll get on Mary's question here, and then I'll hop back into some of my other ones here. So Mary asks, what's the update on the banking industry? So we have through the House, the Safe Banking Act. It'll probably go through the Senate. I don't see why they wouldn't want this to happen. When we have banking, when we have access to banking, the numbers become more clear, which means we're going to be able to collect more tax revenue as a government, and people can be more safe as entrepreneurs when they start to, you deal in a lot of cash. We're talking like not 500 grand. I'm talking like $5 million, $10 million. That's a lot of cash. There's a lot of risk there. It could be just someone internal, bad actor, rip you off. It could be loss of money. And what happens when you lose that cash? There's no insurance on paper bills. So I think that there is going to be something. I think California is doing some kind of state chartered thing. And there are some banks out there that are taking your capital, but they're charging 1 or 2 percentage points on that deposit. So I hope it comes sooner than later, but I really don't know how that's going to all shake out. But I know that at some point it's really going to come together. But, to wrap up on should you start a hemp business or a cannabis business, this is really a personal answer. You need to truly ponder. I can't give you this answer. It's really down to who you want to be, So be thoughtful about that. It's an uphill battle. Being an entrepreneur, this is not a get rich quick thing. We're coming up on. So let me step back a moment here. We are in the beginning stages still, but we're in the late beginning. And one thing you're starting to see now is companies that raised capital at the beginning of 2018 are now starting to run really dry on their cash. So instead of starting a new cannabis company, try to look for deals of companies that are becoming very, very cash strapped, right? Usually when you raise capital, you raise it to last you 18 to 24 months. And a lot of companies are now butting up to that. Oh crap, we have like only 300 grand in the bank. Our burn rate's 100K a month. What do we do? So they're looking for strategic investors, strategic buyers. And what's great about this is they've laid the groundwork. They've built the infrastructure. They've gotten the licenses. They've gotten SOPs down. They maybe even hired people for you. They've built a team. Now you can come in, buy that company typically for, pennies on the dollar. I won't say pennies. I want, 10 cents, 15, 40 cents on the dollar. You're going to get a big discount for doing that. Because it doesn't take a hero to lose $100,000 every month. I would say really, really think about, if you're going to raise money, have a plan. Like the clock starts ticking when you raise that money. So let's get into another question here. Let's see what other questions are on here. Yeah. And I agree with Rick. Richard here, he says, huge mistake. Banking industry hasn't adapted yet. It hasn't. You get these, slower industries take a long time to get around, but they will get there. We need them just as much as they need us. So just, try to work together in that sense. So one question kind of to dovetail off the last one, right? Last one was, how do you, should you get into hemp or cannabis? This one is more particular to the cannabis part, is that people ask, well, what vertical should I get into? Right? They want to make sure they're in the most profitable one, or the one that's the most important. So, or the one that's going to be around the longest. So I always ask people this question when I get that question is, well, what are you and your team really, really good at, right? Growing, distribution, retail, manufacturing, testing, right? What are you really, really good at, right? Because if you can't keep, or anyone on your team can't keep a single house plant alive, you probably shouldn't be growing. And if you hate working with the public, or you despise working with the public, retail cannabis probably isn't for you. So self-awareness is really critical to success in the cannabis industry here. Be very, very understanding that you have to be thinking about what you're good at. And then also context to your market is very important. So understand what the needs of your local community are. So cannabis is still a local business, even like a cannabis dispensary. Think about your local liquor store or your local CVS, right? There's like one in every corner, or like one in every other corner, because it's a local business. People don't travel unless it's necessary 15 miles to buy cannabis, right? They're going in their local neighborhood. They pull up weed maps. They're like, all right, my address is zip code is 91802. Put it in. All right, cool. go into this one right here. They got good deals, 4.9 star review, and they go. Okay, that's the kind of the mentality of the customer. So what does your industry need in that local area? Does it need distribution? Does it need more retail? Does it need retail focused more on the older generation, or something towards the female generation, or female gender, or target market? You're going to have a lot of different openings in that. Maybe it's private clubs. You have no clue what that could be. So think about your market, right? If what I've seen really in a lot of the financials that we review, vertical integration is really the only way to survive long term, unless you have a really big success with a brand. Okay, you have to have a huge success with a brand or vertical integration. Everything else seems like you're just picking up breadcrumbs, just getting into one vertical, unless you're really, really deep into that vertical and know what you're doing and you're really kicking ass. So I would try to go vertically integrated, getting those micro biz licenses, or getting all the licenses. If you can get them all in one city, one building, there's some tax savings there for that. So be thoughtful. But here's one thing I want to talk about, that, what vertical should you get in? People don't think about second and third order magnitude opportunities, right? Or order consequences, not magnitude, right? Because cannabis is legal, new industries have emerged, right? And we'll talk about those in a moment here, right? So what opportunities outside of just starting a cannabis business and brand are there? And what we call these are ancillary services, AKA ancillary services. So similar to the gold rush, right? See, everybody's coming out here to go get gold and strike it rich. Everyone wants to start a weed company and be rich. But the most successful companies are that gold rush. Levi's, still around today after 150 years. The people that were selling pickaxes, they probably crushed and sold a lot of money because they were selling dreams. So think about it. You really want to try to think about opening up an industry that's dependent on the cannabis industry. So some examples of these ancillary services: wastewater removal, right? Because you can't just flush your water down the regular drains in some cities. So think about wastewater removal for hydroponics. Hemp destruction and hauling if it doesn't pass the testing, right? This stuff has to be done fast. If they don't pass and it tests really, really hot, they got to destroy that crop within 7 days. And that may mean like hundreds or even thousands of acres. You could specialize in that. Waste removal overall, hauling that stuff, right? Testing labs are a huge cash machine right now, because it's like a toll booth to get into the legit market and bring your product to market. How about being a metric specialist? In California, there's a track and trace system called Metric. If you become, I get so many questions on Metric, at least 7 or 8 a week. And I am not an expert in this, but I know that companies are going to be paying a huge, huge dollar for it come January when it has to be here. So think about becoming a metric specialist. Also, specializing your construction, plumbing, electrical company on cannabis specifically, working specific on trying to find grow rooms and building out grow rooms for the electrical side, for doing the piping, the plumbing side, all those different, building up the walls and different things that go along with that. Nutrients companies, lighting companies, compliant packaging for end products, creating new cartridges that don't hold they hold cannabis, but they don't have them at the point. Like you just create the double or triple coil cartridge that burns cleaner, faster, better. Or becoming a master grower or master manufacturer, right? Getting a piece of the action, because these second and third order opportunities, these are what opportunities are created when regulation requirements are required for specific activities, inputs, and final products, right? It may not be, again, the sexiest business, but there's a lot of money to be made. You're a toll booth on this big super highway. So again, don't try to create the next cookies or the next Supreme, right? Consider trying to create the next YKK. Look down on your jackets, on your jeans, on your jackets. You look on that zipper, it says YKK for most people. Zippers are in everything, right? Create the next zipper company, right? Zippers are in $200 pair of jeans or $30 pair of jeans. So look at those edge opportunities and try to find the YKK of cannabis. That's my 2 cents and my hot take on what vertical you should be in. Look at those edge opportunities. And if you're going to be in cannabis, focus on what you're good at. So let's hop back to the chat here and see what you guys got in here. How do you suggest using social media to advertise your brand? So some things to, social media, since we can't do paid media as a cannabis company, right? I'm talking the Facebooks, the Instagrams. I think LinkedIn might allow you to do it. The Googles don't allow you to do it. YouTube. Really, really think about getting into, using social media influencers. And I know influencers is like a really, weirdo word. People don't want to use that. I think it's like all these like models doing, creams and, weight loss stuff. Influencers can just be reaching out to the local mothers in your area, like anyone that has 400 followers, and say, hey, Michelle, I like the content you make. I have a product. Can I send it to you? And could you just kind of create an Instagram story and tell your friends about it if you like it? And people like that would be so thrilled to get reached out to by a brand, right? And it's really hard. It's like hand-to-hand combat. But if you can do that and just pay someone $15 an hour to DM until your account gets stopped for the day, DM every mother or every veteran or everyone in your target market that has less than 1,000 followers, you probably won't have to pay them, right? People don't know how to really price themselves. When you ask them, hey, how much is it going to cost? A lot of them will say free, just send me the product. They're so thrilled to get this product. So, what I would do is just DM them, get them to put the product out there, especially if it's a CBD product. You can ship it through the mail. If not, you're going to have to focus on your local area, which means go to Instagram, look at the local pins, and you could potentially, if you're a delivery company, you could start to become that local marketing for those brands. It's a really cool idea. I like the idea of doing influencer marketing. There's also paid marketing with these big ass billboards. I don't think it's the right thing to do unless you really have money to burn, but we'll see. I know MedMen is like, crushing it, billboards everywhere. Maybe it's working for them. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't have privy to those financials, but that would be my thought on how to advertise on social media, influencer marketing, reaching out to everybody in your target market. That's why it's important to pick a specific target audience. Don't try to appeal to everyone. Don't try to appeal to this, 21-year-old, college student, the 48-year-old, professional, and then the 32-year-old mother who is dealing with stress. They all need to hear something different. They all have different needs. They all have different desires. So really be thoughtful on that. So that's my hot take on social media to advertise your brand. All right. So I got Fred Miller here. Should your business objective be surviving the next few years until there's federal legalization? How will federal legalization affect existing California businesses? I would say, so let me just unpack this. This is a very loaded question here, and I'm just going to give a quick take on this. So should your business objective be surviving the next few years until there's federal legalization? Quick guidance on this. We have no clue when federal legalization is ever going to happen. I think you're going to see a really hot race, because presidential election coming up in here in 13 months. I think you're going to see some people that may even surprise you stand on the platform of saying they're going to legalize cannabis. Legalize, that mean they're not going to go after it. That mean they're going to deschedule it from Schedule 1. What does that mean? I have no clue what that really means, because there's probably a lot of ways to get into, going into the legalization of it. But don't depend on legalization saving your business. Create a business within the framework now. There are many successful businesses when it is right now decriminalized in our state. So try to build a brand here. And if you can, become what we call an MSO, a multi-state operator. And what that means is that you take all of your intellectual property and assign the ownership rights to an LLC, and then try to find joint venture deals in other states outside of California. Go to the Nevadas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, any other state, Chicago, wherever that's going to be at, and try to get into other states and create your network. It may be a little more difficult to do that now, but once federal legalization happens, you're going to see interstate commerce, and that's going to change the game, because then we can start to move cannabis cultivation out to areas where it really makes sense. The Oklahomas, the Texas, the Arizonas of the world, of the country, like that area where it's cheap. You can get cheap land, it's cheap labor, lots of free sunlight, and there's a lot of intelligence around cultivation there. Then you move it up north where there's a lot of good production facilities, and then you move it out to any other metropolitan area to sell the cannabis. You're going to see a huge transformation when legalization comes through. So be thoughtful about that. I would say it could potentially, let me step back from that. There is also a lot of good intelligence in California. We were the first to decriminalize it in 96. That's why you see like the California brand of cannabis still holds weight, not just in the US, but around the entire world. So legalization will change the game. I'm just shooting in the dark here, a few hot takes on it, but you're going to see a lot of things change. And I think the interstate commerce is really what's going to be the big game changer. So start to set yourself up now as an MSO. Let's hop into a few more questions here. Gotcha, cool. Richard, got some little plug there for yourself. All right, cool. Let's take Richard's question and I'll hop into some more ones I have here. So if we get legalization on a federal level, won't cheap import be a threat? Okay, yeah. So Richard Walters, good point here. So what he talks about is like, all right, if we say it's legal, there may be, a bunch of cheap cannabis coming from, other countries. They could legalize it and then say no importation of cannabis. Who knows? We don't know what the nuances of the legalization law are going to be. But again, there's that brand of California cannabis. There will always be a buyer of brand. That's what I brought up earlier. Don't worry about the cannabis. The cannabis will at some point become so high quality. We don't think about who makes the plastic in our bottles, right? This bottle here. We don't know that it's some country, anywhere around the world. We don't know. We just know the brand Smart Water. This is important, okay? Smart Water is very important. It's not the plastic. It's not the water inside, right? We have no clue if this is pumped out of a, New York City water and then cleaned up, but it's the brand Smart Water. So focus on your brand. That's the most important, because if we can import hemp, you can buy that hemp and still sell it under your brand if it meets your brand guidelines and pass all the tests. So my two thoughts on that. Okay, let's. I'll just type in a few more questions here. I like taking these quick ones here. All right, how to Dad? Recently found your channel and have loved the advice that you give. Could you speak on trying to set up a company when one partner lives in Colorado and another in Texas? Let me get a drink of water here. I'm just crushing it. Oh, there it is. All right. So how do you set up a business when one founder is over here and one founder is way over on the other side of the country, when thousands of miles apart, even across in different counties, right? So in starting up a company, I think a few things come to mind, right? Make sure you're making a team that either an ops person or someone that's going to be an executive officer or a marketing person, right? Don't have too much crossover. On that, I would say try to talk as often as possible, making it either, in your early stages, weekly calls through the Zoom or through Skype or whatever that's going to be. And then, week or daily calls, really getting in there, because it's not just building a company, it's creating a friendship and a kinship with your founders. Being a founder of a business, right, you're creating a marriage that's not really founded necessarily always on love. A lot of it's predicated on capital. And when you do that, a lot of things can get really, really messy, especially with someone who's been your best friend for a long time. I've been very, very blessed, the people that I've founded companies with, to have great relationships. My business partner, Simon, he's my best friend, still is my best friend, stood up in my wedding. I stood up in his wedding, but it takes a lot of effort to build a business at just building a business, but building it when you're separate. Like Simon and I only lived 1.5 miles from each other, and we had our stress points as well. But I would say try to get together as often as possible, coordinating. At some point, if things start to take off, one of you guys is going to have to move to the other, or equally displace yourselves in somewhere where you're actually operating that business. So that was my hot take on that. It's tough operating a business when not everybody is in the same area. Remote teams can be very hard to manage. Think about other tools like Slack, so you can chat back and forth and you have a log of everything. Creating ticket system, especially if you're building an app or any kind of like sales organization, using a ticketing system to make sure tasks are getting done, right? A good way to document your process constantly. So there's no misinterpretation like, hey, Mike, I thought you were going to take care of this. And he's like, no, Frank, I thought you were going to take care of it. Assigning out tasks, like using Asana or Monday.com is really helpful in that. That's my few thoughts on that. All right, I'm going to answer a few more here, and then I'm going to hop into the prepared stuff I've got here as well, because I want to answer some of these. Let's just hop into the prepared ones here. So how much capital do you need? It's all across the board, right? I would say it depends on your market, your vertical, your ambitions, the skills of your team, many other factors. The more team members you have that you can do things in-house, the lower your costs are, right? But bank anywhere from 500,000 to $1 million and more, depending on the scale of your operations. It takes a lot of bucks, right? This is a federally regulated industry. It's highly regulated. It's like starting up an airline, right? Essentially, right? Or a liquor company, right? It's not just like anybody can open it up like a dog walking thing, right? There's a lot of licenses, there's red tape, there's inspections, there's legal stuff, there's CPA stuff, all these things that go on. So bank a lot of money. Unless you're in Oklahoma, it's really, really cheap there. They're just giving licenses away. And I'm really happy for that. So if you need help, reach out to our guy, Lawrence, who's on our team. Great guy, help you get into that Oklahoma market, especially if you want to start becoming an MSO out there. But aside from money capital, I want to talk about one thing that people don't really think about too much until they actually get 12 steps in. They're like, oh shit, we don't have this. Human capital. Human capital is so important, right? Because cannabis is a team sport. You may think, oh, we're going to go get licensing way out in the desert and it's going to be cheap and it's fast, but great. Who the hell wants to drive out 2 hours every day to work and back from work? It's going to be very hard to convince your talent to drive out there every day and to drive back. You will, if they do that, you will have to have a huge compensation plan for them, probably more than you should, a huge benefits plan to them. It's going to be crazy on how much you have to pay these people to go out there, especially a master grower. Master growers are the new CTOs, okay? They get paid a lot of bucks to make this stuff happen. So be very thoughtful about where you place your business. It may be cheaper to start up, but it's gonna be very hard to get this human capital. That's why LA is so competitive. You know, Humboldt, so competitive. Sacramento, so competitive. There's a lot of great human talent and capital up there. So just think about that. Really consider that when you choose your location. But before you raise capital, you're gonna need a business plan. A business plan, a set of financials so that you understand your business, what makes you different, you understand the nuts and bolts of your business. And then, quick take on where to get capital from. Self-funding. My number one thing is fund your business yourself. Don't take any other people's, called OPM, other people's money. Don't take it if you don't need it. It can be the hug of death. Taking money, it dilutes your equity in the company, and it can be very, very disheartening when you start to see, oh, we don't own that much of the company anymore, unless you're building something really, really big and you understand that 20% of a $100 million company is better than 100% of a $1 million or a $0 company. So self-funding, friends and family, you can look at angel investors, look at deals that have already been done and reach out to those particular angel investors. Private equity or venture capital. This really comes into play when you have traction, right? You've got plants in the ground, you have sales on your POS system. Those are the kind of times when you can start to look at PE or VC money. And then bridge loan. If you have good accounts receivable, they don't age too much, and just like have a lot of good stuff coming in, then maybe you want to go for a bridge loan. You can borrow against it, collateralize it against either your capital expenditures, your accounts receivable, and then get into it, get that money to help you level up, buy that new machine, buy 7 more trucks, hire 10 more people so you can really scale fast. So that would be the thing there. I would say also though, don't necessarily go start your own. Wait till these businesses start to collapse and die. These ones that have raised money a while ago, they will need a buyer. So M&A is going to be huge. I bet you the next 12, 24, 36 months, you're going to see parabolic amount of M&A activity. Let's hop into some questions here from the chat. Let's see. So engineering asks, how with federal legalization, how will you see a logistics company be profitable? I'll tell you exactly how you're going to be profitable. Just because you're a logistics company doesn't mean you're not going to have a brand, right? It may come down to you can't charge as a ton of money to do the cross thing, but assurance, making sure your product gets there, deliverability percentages will become very important. Okay, that's how you can stay ahead of the game as a transportation person when federal legalization comes through. So it's important that you create great metrics around your transportation company. Very important in that sense. Creating good deals, creating good relationships. Cannabis is all about the relationships. Business is all about relationships. People run businesses. I don't always do business with people I don't know. I like to at least tap my network on the shoulder first and say, hey, does anybody know blah, 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 blah. And when you start to get word of mouth marketing from other people, that's when you see your business really take off. So take care of your initial customers, and then you will really, really start to see your business grow as a transportation company when federal legalization comes into play here. Let's hop into some more. Oklahoma cannabis industry is expecting $150 bookkeeping. I always answer, are you ready for an audit? They're not quite grasping the concept of cannabis bookkeeping. Yeah, Robin, I mean, look, guys, I'm going to address this question a little bit later about, why it's expensive for bookkeeping, but it just is. It's expensive. There's a lot of tax laws we have to work and skirt around. Not skirt by any means. We're not skirting. We're just trying to make the laws work for you. The goat tree. There's a little secret in Oklahoma and Arkansas. The Archbuckle Mountains are almost the same climate and soil as Northern California. It's a great place to do your outdoor grows and farming. So look at that, guys. Check that out in the chat. Might find a new spot. Transportation stuff. See, all right. I'm glad you guys are finding this very helpful. Yeah, Richard talks, the rule of startups, 3 times the money and 3 times the effort and time. If you think it's going to take a year, it's going to take 3 years. Trust me, it's a really, really high uphill battle here. So if you have any more questions, please drop them in the chat. I've got one more prepared one here. Just want to be thoughtful and really give you guys a lot of value here. We've been going about 50 minutes, and I'm enjoying this a lot. This is a lot of fun here to get to chat with you guys back and forth. So, we have these sales calls. We talk with people. We try to engage them in our services, and people all ask quite often, why is Green Growth CPAs a bit more expensive or a lot more expensive than other CPA firms? And I get it. Sometimes there's sticker shock when you work with us, and I'll tell you a few reasons why that's not always true in a certain sense, or how you can rationalize this in your mind. So it's not that expensive when you look at the value that we're going to bring to your company. So to build on what Robin said, bookkeeping is not just something you go to bench.co and get a $100 bookkeeper. Right? There's a lot of nuanced tax laws, 280E. It doesn't allow you to take certain things, right? So for our CFO service, you may spend $30,000 to $50,000 a year. We strive to bring you $100,000 to $125,000 in tax savings for every $1 million in top line revenue that you have. Now, to be able to do that for you, we need to use, GAAP accrual accounting under the 471 tax code, and make sure that allocations like rent, utilities, and payroll are reasonable, right? And in a relation to the tax guidance and properly documented and supported. This is not something that any $20 or $30 bookkeeper can do this for you. Most bookkeepers don't understand accrual accounting, right? Sometimes they even get basic journal entries wrong. Now you compound that over 2,000 journal entries, you guys could be looking at some really messed up books. Then when it comes tax time, you're gonna have to pay that fee to a very smart cannabis accountant anyways. You might as well have been doing it from the beginning and getting guidance all along the way, right? And if you're going to be selling your company in the next 24 to 48 months, you're going to likely need an audit. The person buying your company is going to say, hey, we need an audit. And audits cost $25,000 to $50,000. So you're either going to pay it all at once in that audit, or you pay it over time and get guidance over that time period. And that guidance can help you grow your company to be a larger, more profitable company, saving on taxes every month, every year, and helping you reinvest back into the business. Now, another thing about Green Growth CPAs is we're specialists. We are not generalists. Cannabis is not just one practice area for our company, right? We only work with cannabis clients. That's it, only cannabis. So you're not, this is the third part of this, you're not paying us to learn on your dime, right? You may see a lower rate per hour from another CPA firm and say, we tell you it's going to take 100 hours to do the job. They're going to do 200 hours, and they're going to spend the first 100 learning what they have to do. And sometimes that includes contacting us so that we can coach them. Trust me, we work with other CPAs and teach them how to do this work sometimes. And it's not cheap for them to do that. And right, you may be able to hit a generalist firm that will undercut us on price, and you'll save money in that short term. But in the long term, you're going to have a weaker tax strategy, right? Your money's not working for you every day, day in and day out, right? And essentially, again, you're going to be billed for more hours than you would with us. That's kind of the thing there. So it will net probably be the same cost, maybe a little bit lower, but you don't benefit from the upside of that, right? And then, with Green Growth CPAs, you are not just getting something for the first time. We've done what we're going to do for you for over 400 clients, strategies that have been backed by tax court cases and our experience. We're not just shooting from the hip here. We're using experience from the field to actually help you out, right? So you can feel confident, right? We don't just sell tax services here. We try to make your CEOs, your COOs, your investors feel confident, right? That's what we do here. And I had a really good saying from one of our other prospective clients: you do it right or you do it twice. And that's really all I have to say on that. That's the most important thing. Do it right the first time. Invest, invest, invest. Don't skip on things that could really be huge gains for you. Let's jump back into the chat here and see what else you got going on. Are there roadblocks for out-of-state investors? I mean, there can be potentially some roadblocks. I really be thoughtful about, I would get someone in state, wherever you're doing your deal. So if you're in New Mexico and you want to bring money into California, get someone who is done transactional law and investment law in the state that you're going to be sending the money to, as well as someone that's your own personal lawyer in your state, quarterbacking the two. I don't know too much. I don't want to give anything. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know much about that stuff. So I would say reach out to a lawyer to get some guidance on that. So Gotri says, to get around transportation issues, state, intrastate, you'll be subject to state law and not federal transportation. But the problem I have is running into insurance costs and policy limitations. Yeah, look, we're really far behind. You think banking's behind? We just got crop insurance, a little bit of it for hemp, right? And hemp has got like very little psychoactive ingredient. We're still like in this whole thing, like HR is just getting there. 401ks are just getting there. Paying people for payroll is just getting there, right? We are very much in the early stages. So there's a lot of falling into pitfalls. And that's why you need to work with, CPAs, lawyers, business consultants that can help guide you on what paths not to go down, or get a mentor, partner with other businesses. It's a team sport. Help each other. If all boats rise when the water in the harbor rises, right? Make sure that happens. Help each other out. Really share the info you're doing, like what we're doing here. I'm trying to be helpful, but I can only do so much. All right. So, hey, this is pretty much, if you got any more questions, I'm going to do a quick little thing here. So if you're still around here, I want to offer you, hopefully you've derived some value from this. Hopefully it was very helpful for you. I've really much enjoyed this, but I'm going to post a link in here to a LinkedIn post. Okay. I just made this post. I want you to go to that post. You can go in there. We are giving away a 1-hour consult with myself. So 1 hour, ask me any and all questions you need or have about your cannabis business. I don't care where you're at in the spectrum. If you're a startup, don't know anything, you don't even know what you want to do, it could be you. It could be someone in the middle who's kind of got their things and maybe a little bit of licenses or just starting that licensing process, or someone that's very, very, well sophisticated and they want to go do M&A. I'm giving away 1 hour of my time, $500 value. So go ahead, click on there. You'll see the link to go to the web page and fill out that form. Your name, first name, last name, email address, what part of, how far along the industry you are, and then, what your biggest question is. And then I'm going to pick a winner at noon on Thursday, and I'll let you know by email. You'll have 48 hours to claim that prize. And then if not, we'll just keep dropping down and picking new winners here. So I want to provide as much value. So hopefully this helps out here. Fred, thank you for your time, and thank you for sticking around. But it's been my ultimate pleasure. I love spending time with you guys here on the live, through our videos. So, really, really appreciate it. If there's any other questions, I'll stick around for a few more moments here. Drop them in the chat, but make sure you go, fill that out. Can you pin this one? Oh, I can't pin it yet, but I'll pin it in there somehow. But hey, go make sure you fill that form out. Anybody, you could be a CPA, you could be anything. I just want to sit and chat with you, spend an hour of my time. Again, we usually charge $500 for these 1 hour consults, but I want to, you spent an hour with me. Let me spend another full hour with you. I really, really appreciate you guys. Any more questions, drop them in. I got to get some water, B. It is a lot of talking here. I will have a replay for this too. I think there's going to be a YouTube. They put a replay out typically for these lives, but I'm going to put someone, I got a camera going over here. I got my mic over here. So good deal. All right. Anybody else? Any other questions? All right. Well, look like we got not many people here with any other last questions. So This is me signing off. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time. If you have any other questions, please go to greengrowthcpas.com. Click that Get Started button up in the right-hand corner, wherever that is on the webpage there, or give us a call at 800-674-9050. Please make sure you go to that LinkedIn post in the chat and click that, then follow that to the form to fill that form out. I'll drop the link to that form, and let me just drop that in for you guys here so you can get access to it right away. Cool. I'm going to drop that link in here right now. Yeah, hit on that. Let's go and drop in there. I want many people to get in there. So we got 2-3 days here to get involved. So go ahead, fill that out, and then we'll see you guys soon. Hey, thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see y'all soon.